The Federal Reserve has stated very much it's on hold. It's watching to see how that trade-off between its employment mandate and its price stability mandate play out. Now, our outlook for the second half of this year is that growth will slow. We will see the labor market continue to gradually cool. And in that environment, the Fed will have a choice between prioritizing the growth employment side of its mandate or the inflation side.
You can smell it if you've been around markets long enough. Something's off. The tickers look calm. The headlines are upbeat. Influencers keep telling you, this is the start of the next leg up. But underneath it's different. The same firms that told you Bitcoin was dangerous are now the ones holding the custody keys. The same policymakers who mocked crypto are quietly writing rules to box it in. BlackRock isn't a cheerleader. It's a gatekeeper. They don't wander into markets to participate. They come to shape them. Every product they launch around Bitcoin is another pipe, another funnel, another place where liquidity moves from the open wild into their walled garden. Back when Bitcoin was a movement, people talked about freedom. No middlemen, no surveillance, no counterparty risk. That energy built an entire parallel economy. Now look at the landscape. ETFs, wrap tokens, tokenized treasuries, regulated custodians. All the edges have been sanded down. Every on-ramp leads to an institution. Every off-ramp is a bank. You think this is progress, but it's containment. They don't kill revolutions anymore. They domesticate them. BlackRock doesn't need to love Bitcoin. It just needs to make sure Bitcoin can't be used as a weapon against the system they already run. Wrap it up, make it compliant, slow it down, put it behind KYC walls and call it adoption. Meanwhile, central banks are building their own digital currencies, CBDCs, and everyone is treating them like some future project. They're not future. They're pilots running right now. BIS, IMF, national banks, they're all quietly testing rails that look a lot like the rails public tokens already built. This isn't about competition between CBDCs and Bitcoin. They're complementary. Bitcoin becomes the reserve asset sitting in the background, held in institutional custody, stabilizing programmable currencies the way gold once stabilized paper money. Stable coins become the testing ground for CBDC tech. Private companies run the middle layer. What you end up with is a stack where everything looks digital and open, but every transaction, every permission, every door is controlled. The language around this is always soothing. Efficiency, inclusion, innovation. But when you strip the words away, what's left is data control. Programmable money tied to identity. Ledgers where privacy is no longer a default but a permission. Settlement layers where every move is scored, risk-weighted, and pre-approved. They're not building a new financial system for you. They're building one for themselves, and you get to use it on their terms. Look at the projects already live. Tokenized government bonds on public chains. Stable coins settling billions every day. Asset managers partnering with crypto custodians. Even the networks we celebrated, Ethereum, Polygon, Avalanche, are now full of institutional flows, the same addresses tied to banks and asset managers. The same lobbyists who fought to choke crypto innovation a few years ago are now calling it digital transformation. Retail investors are cheering mass adoption. But adoption under surveillance isn't liberation. It's digital tenancy. You're allowed to live there, but you don't own the walls. And the timing is perfect for them. The testing phase is quiet. Nothing dramatic enough to spook markets. Everything looks decentralized enough to keep people calm. Meanwhile, the IMF, BIS, and central banks are sharing papers, running pilots, coordinating on interoperability of CBDCs. They watch public token networks like open-source laboratories. They get all the data, all the behavioral insights without risking a single sovereign unit. They learn how liquidity behaves, how people react under stress, how cross-border flows shift. By the time they roll out their own systems, they'll know exactly where the weaknesses are, exactly how to structure incentives. This was always the risk. Revolutions get institutionalized. The question was never if, it was when. You can already see the outline. A world where tokens exist but the rails belong to the same crowd that built the old system. A world where you own digital assets but can only move them through compliant channels. A world where privacy is sold back to you as a premium feature. We're not at the finish line yet. This is still the silent phase, the architecture phase. But once CBDCs, tokenized treasuries, and institutional Bitcoin converge, the off-ramp starts to disappear. You'll have tokens, but not sovereignty. You'll have digital wallets, but not freedom of movement. You'll see innovation, but under it all, the same chains are tightening, just made of code instead of iron. If you've been paying attention, you can already feel the shift. The question now isn't whether they're doing it. It's whether enough people notice before the rails lock in. You can almost laugh at how fast everyone forgot what the original fight was about. Remember when people used to say, "Not your keys, not your coins"? That phrase was a rebellion, not a slogan. Now it's a marketing tag used by custodians backed by trillion-dollar institutions. Every exchange wants you to trust them again. Every government wants you to participate in digital innovation. But it's the same circle of control, just repackaged with better UX and cleaner branding. BlackRock doesn't need to tell you it owns the rails. It shows you. It doesn't scream about decentralization. It co-opts it. It launches a Bitcoin ETF, everyone cheers, and retail piles in thinking this is validation. But who's actually holding those coins? Who's the custodian? Who votes on network governance? You? No. The same small club that runs the traditional financial machine. And that's the point. Control doesn't have to look like a crackdown. It just needs to look convenient enough that people stop questioning it. Meanwhile, the regulators keep pretending they're protecting investors. It's funny, they weren't protecting anyone when banks were collapsing, when inflation was eating savings, or when credit markets froze. But the second average people found a way to move value outside the system, suddenly the government cared about safety. What they really cared about was control slipping. They call it systemic risk, but it's just risk to their system. Behind all the noise, the IMF and BIS are running what looks like academic studies, publishing these cold, polished PDFs filled with words like cross-border harmonization and monetary interoperability. It sounds so boring you almost skip over it. But buried in those paragraphs are the same themes: testing public blockchain data, examining settlement efficiency, exploring privacy layers. They're learning from everything happening in crypto without ever admitting they're learning from it. It's the perfect cover. You can't be accused of endorsing crypto if you frame it as research. You can trace their moves through patterns, not announcements. BIS sets up Project Dunbar, testing multi-CBDC cross-border payments. The IMF hosts closed workshops with central banks about digital money governance. The ECB runs pilots with private tech partners. None of them are building from scratch. They're cherry-picking open innovations that already exist, consensus mechanisms, token standards, privacy layers, and weaving them into a new financial architecture where they hold the keys. They can't replicate crypto's spirit, but they can replicate its infrastructure. And that's what's happening. The rails are being copied, not the rebellion. The tools built to empower people are being inverted to empower institutions. If you strip the logos away, what's left is programmable control. They want programmable money for programmable citizens. And they'll tell you it's for convenience, for efficiency, for speed. That's how power hides, not in oppression, but in optimization. Every time a new digital currency pilot gets announced, people shrug. It's just a test. But it's not a test, it's a rehearsal. A way to see how much people will tolerate, how far the infrastructure can reach before there's backlash. The silence around it is the scariest part. People are so distracted arguing about price predictions that no one's asking what happens once everything becomes tokenized but nothing remains free. And here's the quiet part. They need Bitcoin alive. They need Ethereum alive. They need the idea of open crypto to survive long enough to normalize digital money. As camouflage, Bitcoin becomes the front end of legitimacy while the back end morphs into a surveillance grid. Once everything runs on digital rails, they can step in, regulate the nodes, the stable coins, the exchanges, and suddenly freedom money becomes a managed commodity. People think censorship-resistant systems can't be captured, but that's naive. You don't need to hack the code when you can control the choke points. Stablecoin issuers, custodians, off-ramps, tax policy, compliance layers, that's where real power lives. The average person won't even notice the change. They'll still see Bitcoin in their portfolio, stablecoin in their wallet, digital dollar in their account. It'll look the same. It just won't be the same. This is how revolutions end now, quietly, efficiently, and with great customer service. There's this illusion people still cling to, that decentralization automatically means freedom. It doesn't. Not when the same players who crashed the old system are now funding the new one. Look at how every innovation starts pure and ends captured. It's the same pattern over and over. The internet was supposed to democratize information, but now it's a handful of platforms deciding what you see. Social media was supposed to give people a voice, but it gave corporations the biggest microphone in history. Crypto was supposed to break the banks, and now the banks are minting stablecoins. And somehow, people still think this time will be different. It's almost painful to watch. Every new project launches with that same slogan, power to the people. And yet, the first thing they do is chase institutional funding. You can't serve two masters. You can't say you're building for freedom while begging the gatekeepers for legitimacy. That's how the trap works. They make you think you need permission. They make you think their approval is validation, when in reality it's surrender. The central banks have mastered the art of studying rebellion without participating in it. They send researchers to blockchain conferences. They build innovation hubs. They test interoperability using private networks that mimic Ethereum's architecture but strip out the one thing that made it revolutionary: permissionless access. They're learning every technical lesson crypto taught them while rejecting every philosophical one. You won't see them holding tokens. You won't catch them posting on crypto Twitter. But you'll see their fingerprints in the protocols. You'll see it in the way stablecoin regulations are written to favor bank-backed issuers. You'll see it in how digital identity frameworks keep popping up in policy discussions right next to CBDCs. Every step looks small, harmless, bureaucratic. But they all lead in the same direction: a world where every transaction is observable, every wallet is traceable, and privacy is rebranded as non-compliance. People don't realize how valuable the chaos of crypto was. The wildness, the scams, the memes, they made it unpredictable, unmanageable. That was its greatest strength. Now everything's being sanitized, polished. It's becoming too respectable. Once it becomes respectable, it becomes controllable. That's how the system digests rebellion. Not by destroying it, but by absorbing it. I've seen central bankers talk about tokenization of real-world assets, with this glint in their eyes, as if they've found the philosopher's stone. They talk about efficiency, but what they're really after is mapping value flows in real time. Tokenization isn't just about turning gold or bonds into digital assets. It's about visibility. When everything's on-chain, nothing's hidden. That's their dream: to make finance perfectly observable, perfectly auditable, perfectly governable. And yet, there's irony in it all. Because the very systems they're trying to emulate still depend on public blockchains for legitimacy. They're learning from open-source developers who work for passion, not profit. They're building surveillance rails on the backs of people who believed in transparency. It's a weird kind of betrayal, quiet, polite, dressed in policy language. People think the threat to freedom will come as a ban, a lockdown, a dramatic announcement. It won't. It'll come as an update, a new feature, an integration. You'll wake up one day and realize the wallet you're using now has a new compliance layer. Your transactions have new metadata tags. Your digital ID is automatically linked for fraud prevention. It'll all sound reasonable, even helpful. And that's how control wins. It doesn't force itself on you. Convinces you it's safer this way. Crypto was never supposed to be safe. It was supposed to be dangerous. Dangerous to the status quo. Dangerous to the idea that money needs permission. But they've made people afraid of danger. They've replaced risk with convenience. And in doing so, they've made comfort the new cage. That's the quiet war playing out right now. Not between Bitcoin and the dollar, but between freedom and frictionless control. You can picture the final move already. It won't be chaos. It'll be a rollout, calm, clinical, deliberate. One morning, a headline will flash across every major outlet. The future of money has arrived. They'll frame it like progress, not control. The central banks will call it inclusion. The corporations will call it efficiency. The politicians will call it innovation. But those who've been paying attention will see it for what it is, the end of the experiment and the beginning of management. The digital rails will be ready, the custodians already in place, the stablecoins converted quietly into regulated tokens, and every wallet tagged under verified compliance. No resistance, no crash, no noise, just an upgrade you didn't agree to. By then, crypto as we knew it will look unrecognizable. The wild, borderless chaos will have been archived, studied, and replaced by a clean, monitored ecosystem where freedom still exists, but only within preset parameters. They'll still call it decentralized. They'll still use the same buzzwords, interoperability, efficiency, transparency, but it'll all be wrapped in fences you can't see. The IMF will hold digital coordination summits. The BIS will issue reports about cross-sector integration. And in every presentation, the word trust will keep popping up, like a nervous tick trying to convince you this is all fine. There'll be scenarios that make it look necessary. A liquidity crisis, a cross-border settlement issue, maybe even a cyber attack, the kind of event that justifies rapid coordination. You'll see coordinated press conferences, synchronized policy statements, and a chorus of the system is adapting. They won't need to lie. They'll just redefine what safety means. Safety will mean traceability. Security will mean surveillance. Privacy will be a privilege. And everyone will applaud because it feels stable again. The scary part isn't the control. It's how invisible it'll feel. You'll still be able to move money. You'll still see numbers on your screen. You'll still send and receive, stake and swap. But behind that smooth surface, every transaction will feed into data models that profile spending habits, social graphs, behavioral risk. The system will know not just what you bought, but why. It'll predict your next move, your next purchase, your next crisis. And all of it will be justified in the name of financial stability. It's easy to say this sounds paranoid, but if you trace history, this is always how it goes. Every major leap in control started as convenience. Surveillance began as safety. Data collection began as personalization. The tools of comfort always come before the chains of compliance. You think you're choosing it, but you're just choosing the packaging. That's the story of every empire. Make the subjects think they're participating in progress. But there's still a crack in the wall, and it's not in the code, it's in people. There's still a window for those who remember why decentralization mattered in the first place. Those who build outside permission. Those who refuse to exchange privacy for ease. Those who still value friction because it keeps the system honest. The open source ethos hasn't died yet. It's just buried under noise. But it's there, waiting for a second wind. A smaller, rougher, less polished movement that doesn't want Wall Street's approval or central bank validation. That's where the real fight will happen. Not in boardrooms, but in code repos, in grassroots nodes, in messy, imperfect systems that actually belong to the people. And maybe that's what scares them the most. Not crypto as a market, but crypto as an idea. The idea that people can self-organize value without permission. That money doesn't need a logo. That trust can exist between strangers. That's the heresy at the heart of it all. They can't kill that idea, so they'll drown it in convenience until people forget it ever existed. But if even a small group remembers, if even a handful keep running the real networks, the control grid will never be absolute. Because freedom doesn't need to be dominant. It just needs to survive. So, as the headlines come and the upgrades roll out and the world starts calling surveillance innovation, remember this, it was never about the technology. It was about who controls it. Bitcoin, CBDCs, stablecoins, tokenized assets, they're all just mirrors reflecting the same question back at us. Who gets to decide what value means? And if the answer isn't you, then all this progress is just a prettier version of the past. If you've made it this far, then you already know this message isn't just a rant. It's a warning and maybe a bit of hope. Because you can still choose. You can still run your own node. You can still self-custody. You can still question the headlines instead of retweeting them. That's where freedom starts, not in the markets but in awareness. So before you close this video, leave a comment. Not just an emoji, not just facts bro. Tell me what you see happening. Tell me if you think the future is programmable or free. Because the real discussion isn't on CNBC, it's right here, between people who still give a damn about what money used to mean. And if enough of us keep talking about it, they won't be able to bury the truth forever.